Hey guys, welcome to the Lulu Blue Studio. If you are new here, my name is Luisa and this is the Lulu Blue Studio channel where we mainly like to paint botanical subjects in watercolor, but sometimes we also like to add a few marks with different media. Since spring has arrived, I have decided to start a brand new series that is called Spring Party, where we are going to paint mainly flower and botanical subjects in watercolor, but we are also going to add and mix different types of media like colored pencils and crayons. We are going to kick off this series today by painting some simple flowers in watercolor, where we are going to add a few marks with colored pencils, and we are also going to add the motto "Welcome Spring." Are you ready to start this spring party with me? Let's start now. We painted this composition starting from the two main flowers that we are going to create in the upper left part of the page and in the lower right side of this page. I'm mixing on my color palette a little bit of pink and some transparent orange, and I use my round brush in size 6 to start to create the first flower in the upper left part of this page. This composition is super simple, and differently from other tutorials I've created on this channel, these flowers are created just by highlighting the shape of the petals with a round brush in size 6. And then we are going to add some marks, some strokes with some colored pencils in a second moment. So we started creating the first flower. This is the most typical 5 petals flowers, highlighting the shape of the petals with a light pink color and then adding the yellow center, and I used in this case some lemon yellow. Then, with this same brush, I'm mixing on my color palette some Azomethine green yellow and green earth. Just using the tip of this brush and just the belly when I wanted to create thicker strokes, I create the outer part of these leaves. This means that the center part of these leaves is left empty because I want to play in a second moment with my colored pencils and add in the leaves too some strokes with a different medium. In this case, as I said, we are using colored pencils, and this is going to highlight different textures in the leaves too. To bring some variety, I'm also creating in the upper part of this composition some leaves, very simple leaves that are created with this round brush by adding some pressure to the belly up to the tip and then removing the pressure and creating the typical type of leaves that you would create with a round brush. Basically, I'm creating a few leaves with some white spaces in between and a few leaves that are instead filling in all of the area with green pigment. In this case, I'm adding some darker brush strokes using some cobalt green, both in the leaves that are completely painted and also in the leaves that have some white spaces in between. Adding these types of brush strokes, which are much darker, are going to really help to bring this composition to life. I'm adding in this moment these brush strokes in darker color in order to give a flow to this composition. And then I'm taking some Quinacridone Magenta and just with the tip of this brush I'm creating some very simple round shapes that remind me the shape of berries that I want to add to this flower composition. I'm using mainly some Quinacridone Magenta, and sometimes I'm also adding some Scarlet Red to the mixture. So in this mixed media composition, we are first creating the first layer with our beloved watercolor paints, and then we are going to add more texture with the colored pencils. If you don't have colored pencils available, you can use any type of different marker you have, even for example crayons or other types of markers. In this moment, I started to create with the same type of mixture, so creating a type of pink on my color palette and then adding a few brush strokes in Scarlet Red, I'm creating the flower in the lower part of this page. I imagine this flower in the bottom part of this composition facing the upper flower that I've created in first place, and therefore I'm only seeing the side of this flower. I'm adding leaves in the same manner as I did before, so I'm using mainly a mixture of Azomethine green yellow and mainly some Cobalt green dark, and I just highlight the shape of these big leaves. This is a very simple composition. Creating flowers and leaves in this style will really help you if you are a beginner to not focus on techniques that are very important for watercolor, such as wet on wet and wet on dry, but in this case just focus on creating a good shape for the petals of your flowers and for the leaves of this composition. This is a great exercise not only for beginners but also for people that are more experienced to train these muscles in the brain to understand how are the shapes of these elements created. And so my recommendation for you is to remember that all of the petals need to be structured in a way that they can be thicker or thinner, longer or shorter, but they all need to lead towards the same center. And the same is valid also for the leaves. So when you are creating leaves, they can have any shape, they can be thicker, they can be thinner, but just remember to have them originating from the same starting point. And so up until now we have created the shape of our flowers and leaves in two different areas of this page, and we are leaving some white space exactly in the middle to write our motto, which is Welcome Spring. We have highlighted the shape of the petals of these flowers by adding some brush strokes in Quinacridone Magenta, which is a little bit darker compared to the mixture that I used to create in first place the shape of the flowers. And then at this point I start to add texture to this composition using my colored pencils. These colored pencils are the most common colored pencils that you can find in the shop. Use anything you have available. And what we are doing is first using the yellow color pencil to add some texture in the center of the flower. And then with the pink pencil we are instead highlighting the shapes of these petals. In this sense, we are creating some marks into the petals where we have left some white space, so there is still the page underneath and no paint. And we are adding some pressure to the tip of this pencil to add these strokes and basically highlight the shape of these petals. I have decided to use a pink color which is quite similar to the colors that I use to create the shape of the petals, but it's up to you to decide which color to use to add these strokes to your flowers. You can create this composition as colorful as you like, and also you can create as many details as you like. So for example, in the petals I just added the strokes in pink color, but for example you could use 2 colors or 3 colors. For the leaves, you can behave exactly in the same way. In my case, I took my light green color pencil and I'm adding a few strokes into the areas that I left empty from the paint. Then, with the same pencil, I'm adding secondary elements, which means I'm adding some small leaves that are originating, let's say, from the center of the flower. Basically, I want to highlight a flow into the 2 flowers that I've created in the upper part of the page and the lower part of the page. And I'm using this pencil because in this way I can highlight different textures in the whole composition. I am basically creating with 2 different types of greens, very small stems and then very simple leaves. The leaves are created by sort of creating circular shapes, elongated circular shapes that originate from the stem that I've created. Some stems are longer, some leaves are a little bit bigger than others, and you can also decide to fill in these leaves with your green pencil, or you can leave them empty and just create the shape of these small leaves. This is a very fun exercise that you can practice, even just, as I said before, to develop your memory on how the shapes of these botanical elements are created. There is no right and no wrong on the shape of the leaves or of the flowers that you are creating, because practicing these types of exercises, you can really develop your style and you can find shapes of flowers or leaves or secondary elements that you might like to create more than others. And so with this first tutorial in the spring party, I really want you to practice your brushstrokes with watercolor, but also mix different media to experience something different and develop other ideas that are going to be great even to develop your own style. And at this point, we have left the white space in the middle of this page to add our motto, Welcome Spring. I'm using the same pink pencil I've used to add the marks and the highlights into the flowers, and I'm adding in a sort of italic font the letters that write the motto Welcome Spring. You can use any type of lettering. You might even be better than me in writing Welcome Spring. So just use your imagination and write down this motto or any other motto you prefer to add into this painting with your pencils. If you are painting along with me, I would love to see your creations, so you can tag me along, for example, on your Instagram post if you're going to share it there, or write me in the comments below, even for example, if these types of tutorials where we are using different types of media and we are mixing them all together are useful for you. Your comments are insightful for me because they really help me to understand which type of content to create for this channel. So I thank you already now for the time you might take to write me any feedback under this video. The spring party has just started. I really hope you had fun mixing these different media and painting this very simple type of flower composition. This spring party is going to last for 5 weeks, and I'm going to release next week the day 2 of this spring party. So get ready with all of your painting supplies, and I'm really looking forward to paint again with you. Thank you for watching. See you next week.